In this tutorial, we will create 4 simple light types in USD using Grasshopper. We will see more complex examples of this in a later tutorial, and we will post the sample files so you can follow along. The Omniverse Grasshopper connector is installed with the Omniverse Rhino connector, so you don't have to have a separate install for this. Once you have the connector installed, you will see an Omniverse tab in Grasshopper. Inside this tab, you can find all the components for this tutorial under the Lights subsection. We have 4 different light types that you can use. Sphere light that expects a point or a plane, rectangle light that expects a base rectangle, cylinder light that expects a line, and a disk light that expects a base circle as an input. As you can imagine, all the light components in Grasshopper require a base geometry depending on the type. Layer name, color, and intensity inputs are standard, and they are shared across all the light components. Additionally, sphere light accepts an IES profile path and radius inputs, while the cylinder light accepts radius and a direction. Now let's get started with the sphere light. The first parameter we're inputting is a point. In this case, we're just using a panel to define a point at 0, 0, 100. At this stage, we will not get a preview of the light in the Rhino viewport until there's an Omni component in the canvas. So we're going to go ahead and create one. Once we have the Omni component, the light shows up in the viewport. For the optional layer name parameter, you can simply use a panel. In this case, I'm calling this light object my sphere light. If you leave this name empty, this will just default to the light type. In this example, I'm using a color swatch for the optional color parameter. We will see more fun examples of this in a later tutorial. Note that as I change the color of my light objects, the preview color changes accordingly. This will come in handy in multiple lights and a dynamic color range. You can also adjust the intensity and the radius of your sphere light. We also support IES profiles with the sphere light. So in this case, I'm referencing a locally installed IES profile on my machine using the built-in path component. Next, we will look at the rectangle and disk lights. These two lights are very similar in nature, except for the base geometry input they expect. I will create a rectangle and a circle to connect to my light component. Once connected, they will also show up in the viewport. Note that the tabs on the lights are pointing downwards. They will always be oriented perpendicular to the base plane you are using in a negative direction. Last light component is the cylinder light. This one takes in a line as the base geometry and shares all the standard input parameters. Note that the direction input on this component only applies to the radially asymmetrical lights. Now, let's go ahead and switch to this file to see the lights in action. You can see all 4 lights set up in different colors with layer names I defined per light type. I also made a very simple box to contain all of our lights. Let's go ahead and publish using the Send to View button. If you would like to learn more about different publish options and settings, you can read more on it in the Rhino Grasshopper documentation or check out the Grasshopper overview tutorial. In this particular example, I'll be using a prop workflow with the Send to View functionality. This will simply publish my file and open it in View. I will toggle the photo mode and reorient the model to look at the lights that we just published from Grasshopper. For this tutorial, I have turned the default sky off in View just so that we can look at the lights a little easier. Let's also have a look at our light objects in the USD tree. As I turn on the stage and expand on the structure, you will notice that there's a lights branch in the USD tree. I have my layer names and light objects conveniently grouped under this branch. This will be very useful for grouping lights in larger scale projects. To quickly illustrate this, I'm going to assign a new layer name to my disk and rectangle lights and call it my new group. Now we're just going to go ahead and send to view again. Once the connector finishes publishing and the file is open in View, we can now expand on the USD tree and we'll see that the new group and the 2 light objects are created. We will see a more advanced use case in the next tutorial. See you next time.